Hi, good evening. I'm Raul Martinez. Welcome to the Blackletter Brunch. Our speaker today is calligrapher, teacher, graphic designer, and lawyer John Prestianni. He will give a presentation about the work of Jeanyee Wong. This presentation is going to be an overview of Jeanyee Wong's work, life, artwork, teaching, and legacy. It documents her impact on American calligraphy and graphic arts through biography, photographs, books and publishing, maps, calligraphy, illustration, and personal correspondence. And go ahead, Paul. Or go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Okay, can everyone see this?
Yeah. Yes, informal
Okay.
personal greetings and envelopes.
Okay, so let me stop this for a second. Need to go back to the beginning. Okay. Let's see. Sorry about that. Okay, can you see this?
No, I don't see anything. I'm just seeing your face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same.
Are you sharing?
I'm trying to. Let's see here. Get there, guys. Sorry. All right. How about now?
Yep, that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Blackletter Brunch, March 8th.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Okay. So, Jeanyee Wong lived to be 97 years old. And she was born in 1920 in San Francisco, where she lived with her family for about 10 years. Apparently, her grandfather's house was on Jones Street in San Francisco. And then at the age of 10, her family moved to New York City. And so from that point on, she was a New Yorker. And she went to high school, sort of in the normal way, and apparently was being pushed towards becoming like a typist type, administrator type. But really, she was very interested in art and had been drawing and kind of pursuing artistic leanings all along as a child. And so she set her sights a little bit higher. And she was a very good student academically, as well as being artistic. And she applied for admission to the Cooper Union in New York. And apparently it had one of the highest entrance exam scores and was admitted at that time. There are photographs of her, kind of like student shots. And she's surrounded all males, all men there. She's like one of the only women. There are a couple of others. And at Cooper Union, she took classes or studied with George Salter, who was a book jacket designer, German. And his work, of course, is very well known. And one of the things that I discovered in preparing this talk was that book jackets still exist from these people from the 50s. Because of the internet, you can find them. And so if you're interested in George Salter, I haven't done this, but I'm sure you can find book jackets on the internet with books that are still being sold, used books. And the same, of course, is true of Jeanyee Wong. All this text, which I'm not going to read out, is from an article I wrote about Jeanyee Wong's contributions to the Harrison collection of calligraphy in San Francisco, in the San Francisco Public Library. I wrote this article in 2017. It was published in Alphabet, the Journal of the Friends of Calligraphy. It has details about her life. I'm not going to read it out loud, but she was an independent artist for her entire career, as far as I know. And she is noted for book jacket design, and she produced over 2,000 of them, which is quite an incredible number. And however, she was also, I would say, equally an illustrator. And she was interested in combining calligraphy with illustration in books. And so she produced a number of books that some of them have handwritten text, others are typeset, but they are copiously illustrated. And this slide shows just one. I'm going to show you some more in a minute. These are some photos of Jeanyee. While I'm doing this, let me close this. Oh, can you still see? Did I stop sharing? I did. Let me go back. Sorry. That's the wrong thing.
There, I'm seeing
Yeah,
I'm seeing your mail here.
yeah. Let me. Okay. This is not the right one. I apologize for this, guys.
No problem.
Happens to the best of us.
I think open, and then it will.
Stop share. Stop this. Okay, now let me try again. At first, it's not working. Bear with me. Okay. No. There. Okay. Almost there. And okay, can you see that?
No, I
No,
don't think you're sharing
no.
yet.
Okay, let me get back to this. Okay, here we are. I promise I'm not going to mess with the buttons anymore. Okay, you can see this, I think.
Yeah, I
Yes.
see the
Okay.
page with the illustration.
Okay, here's some photos of Jeanyee Wong. And she was married. This is her husband in the center here. She and her husband, I think this is from the 40s. And this one with the dragon in the lower right-hand corner is very near the end of her life. I believe when she turned 90, there was some celebration in New York, as far as I'm aware, at that point. I know Jerry Kelly invited her to do a lecture at the Grolier Club. And here are a couple of more photos. On the right is Jeanyee, I think around the time she turned 90. And she has in front of her one of her illustrated books, The Wisdom of Confucius. Okay, so this section now starts book jackets and book illustrations. And I just want to point out a quotation from Jeanyee about the importance of design and the fact that she says she considers herself a designer first and foremost. And she talks about putting parts together, relationship scale, contrast, relative weights and colors. And if you don't have good design, calligraphy won't look so great. Here is a selection of different elements from this book, Wisdom of Confucius. On the far left is a paper label, because the book was produced with a slipcase, and the cover of the slipcase had this label, The Wisdom of Confucius, with this illustration on the far left. In the center are the actual boards of the book, the bound book, with decorated with dragons. And then on the far right is the title page with her illustration and her calligraphy at the time. This is from 1943. And here are a few more full-page illustrations from The Wisdom of Confucius, and it gives you a sample of her skill and as an illustrator. This is another illustrated book from 1965. These slides show things that she did. They're not in chronological order by any means. So this is a jacket of a book called Fairy Tales of the Orient, selected and edited by Pearl Buck, with many full-page illustrations by Jeanyee Wong. And on the right-hand side of the slide are some of those full-page illustrations. These are two book jackets. Well, one is a book jacket, the other is not a book jacket, it's just a printed cover. And what I would point out here, besides this calligraphy, which, you know, she really kind of developed a hand for different purposes. And it's interesting to see as calligraphers how she mixed different styles. For example, the adventurous, you see in some letters a very kind of typical italic, like the minuscule N in adventures. And then with elements from other hands, the rounded bottoms, for example, of the minuscule U in adventurous, and also those wide S's at the very end in adventurous. One thing that came through to me in looking at much of her work was she was very interested in flourishes. And flourishes with Jeanyee Wong are often characterized strongly with horizontal flourishes and diagonal flourishes. And so this cover or jacket, The Adventurous, shows both of them. In the capital T in the, you see this horizontal flourish on the crossbar of the majuscule T, turning into a looped flourish going into the majuscule H. And in the author's name, Santa Rama Rao, you see in the majuscule R's the long tail on the R as a diagonal flourish. And this comes up over and over and over again in her calligraphy. And you see it also in the facing design, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Look at that diagonal flourish on the majuscule K in Khayyam and the majuscule R in Rubaiyat. Another thing to point out is she was an illustrator. And so she didn't just do lettering and calligraphy. When she designed a book jacket, very frequently it incorporated illustration or hand-drawn designs. For example, in both of these, you see these hand-drawn designs. In the adventurous, it looks like a tablet or some, you know, with the scroll work on the top and the bottom, and it looks like kind of a medallion at the bottom of the scroll work. Very typical. In the Rubaiyat, she created an overall pattern in the same way, this drawing of very simple elements combining to make a pattern. And you see this over and over again in her work. Mixing lettering, calligraphic lettering with drawing, with illustration. Okay, here is another book jacket, and you can see it's very distressed, worn and torn. These are internet reproductions that I was able to find. This shows the entire jacket, which she designed with illustration. And again, the way she kind of customizes these alphabets, view to the southeast. It's I don't know how you might characterize this, almost like a foundational hand, a minuscule Roman, but very decorative. And what's interesting to me is to notice everything is done separately. View to the southeast on the right-hand panel, which is the front of the jacket. Now look at the spine. View to the southeast. Notice that on all three of those minuscule T's, she has a loop, kind of a loop bowl shape going, almost a descender. She doesn't do it at the final T in southeast, the very end, but to, the, and south on the spine, she has almost a descender. It's just a little bit of individuality and customization. I really like the capitals. Now, we don't know to what extent she was art directed. Now, she was a commercial artist, which means that she was very frequently art directed by art directors, many of whom she loved. They were very picky. She says that the very high degree of finish on her lettering is a result of having to work for very strict and picky art directors. So we see this again over and over. These are two book jackets showing her italic. It's very, very typical kind of italic for her. Now notice on the right-hand panel, private collection, one of her abilities was to render type forms rather perfectly. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm guessing that the author's name, Jean Starr Untermeyer, may have been hand lettered. In other jackets, which we'll see, it's very clear they were hand lettered. They are perfect typographic renderings. Notice on the left-hand panel, again, you see flourishes where the very strong horizontal and diagonal flourishes. And also notice in Lessing, Doris Lessing, notice how she mixes what look like italic forms with almost a Roman minuscule G, that very wide bowl, that very big bowl on the G, and the way that the stroke, the upward stroke on the small part of the G kind of veers up and out, almost like a flourish, or the dash. She really understood how to flourish letters and mix them into a design, a very thoughtful design, very carefully worked out. Now, these two I put here, they're calligraphic and typographic. The Domesday Dictionary, I'm certain that that title was lettered by hand. Well, I'm 90% certain. I don't really know. We'd have to ask her. She's no longer with us, but I would bet that that's hand lettering. But what's interesting is seeing how the word "the," which is over Domesday Dictionary, also I think was hand lettered, probably mixed with some regular typography. The reason why, but the real reason I put these two together was it shows how she turned what was essentially a jacket that is just lettering, whether it's calligraphy or typography, and mixed in some decorative illustration that's obviously created just for this design, and how skillfully, whatever you think of this style, which to me, probably looks very dated today. These were done in 1963 and 1965, possibly the year before, given that they are published books. And she does this over and over again, where she ornaments what would otherwise be a very plain cover that with no photographs, no actual realistic type illustrations, but she does this decorative type of drawing to liven it up and ornament it. And you see this to some extent on the left-hand panel, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, The Prophetic Voice. Now, this is the kind of assignment that was probably difficult. It's just words. There's no photograph, there's no painting of Rousseau. It's just type or lettering. And here again, it looks like a mixture of calligraphy, pen calligraphy, and rendered typographic form. Jean-Jacques is in italic, and Rousseau looks like a typographic form that's very, very carefully rendered. Again, with this kind of decorative ornamentation containing the lettering. And I've included the spine in many of these because it's part of the design. And she paid a lot of attention, not only to the front of the jacket, but to the spine. The Ageless Chinese is an example, again, where you see these horizontal flourishes and mixed with these minuscule italic letters with Roman capitals, pen capitals. And here she's also created a classic Chinese, I don't know what the word is, it's a circular, like a medallion, to create some ornament. And these are, so the one on the Rousseau cover is 1973, and the Ageless Chinese is 1965. Okay, I put these here because she did do some black letter once in a while, mainly textura type black letter. And again, on the left-hand panel, she mixed it with some very interesting, rather convoluted kind of scroll type, I don't know what you'd call it, drawing to contain this textura, hand-lettered, very almost mechanical, except it does have a lot of life to it. And look at the bowl of that minuscule G in the word Erengard. It's very rounded and graceful. And then for the author's name, Isaac Dinesen, of course, extremely famous novelist, in these kind of flowing capitals that are done on curved baselines. And then the cover for American Artists. This is much more typical of Jeannie's informal approach, but here she's really done it very precisely, of a textura with using almost like stained glass window type coloration for the cover. 1978. These two examples, again, book covers that are designed in such a way to create some liveliness, where you have mainly just a typographic or a lettered type approach. The D.H. Lawrence poems, that little drawing, which might be a phoenix emerging from flames, I'm not sure. You see this, I have another one where you see a very similar type of design, which of course she drew. And then Aaron's Rod is also a D.H. Lawrence title, also showing that what I think is a phoenix design that she drew, and where you see these flat fields of color, where, for example, Aaron's Rod, it's red at the top with the lettering reversed out as white, and then the bottom portion of the cover is this ochre yellow. Okay. Same approach with Women in Love. Just a straight lettered cover with a title, but she's made it very lively with calligraphy. Again, these horizontal flourish in the word love. And then in D.H. Lawrence's name, the R with a very long tail, diagonal type flourish. And then again, the Phoenix design, again, drawn, now this is the third version. She probably did others, drawing them over and over, because there are many jackets I've seen that are this type of approach. Now, the Dale Carnegie title, jacket rather, on the right-hand panel I chose because there's so much calligraphy, How to Enjoy Your Life and Your Job. It's a long title. She's turned it into a very graceful calligraphic treatment with, again, these flourishes. And then underneath it, Dale Carnegie, of course, is very famous. And How to Win Friends and Influence People, very, very famous, popular author. And I am certain that his name, Dale Carnegie, was hand lettered by Jeanyee. Look at the way it, for example, the C and the A, that is not photo composition kerning. That is, those are hand-drawn letters. And I've included, again, the spine to show how she treated the whole cover. Well, the cover, the front cover and the spine. I did show one where it was the entire thing, front cover, spine, and back cover. One thing I do want to point out, something that I noticed. She is very fond, whether it is a minuscule or a majuscule, with the letter Y, using this majuscule form of Y. And you see, for example, in Your Life, the Y, the capital Y at the beginning, very frequent. That is her favorite, seems to be her favorite way to do the letter Y. And she does it both in majuscule and minuscule. And it has a little more of a flourish to it to do it that way. And here she, in How to Enjoy Your Life and Your Job, she has actually added a big flourish to the word your in the final line. Very fond of flourishes. Here's an example of a book that she is just full of illustrations, not a whole lot of calligraphy. Here, the title page, the front cover, Oriental Meditation, is rendered in an almost an uncial type capital, a square capital. I don't know how to characterize it. It does have a contemporary kind of feeling to it, but it is clearly calligraphic. And it is framed by a very detailed, but very almost rough kind of rendering to create these patterns for the illustrations. And these are 3 full-page illustrations, which I, included here to show how she was able to create these very rather elaborate designs, but to do them in almost a rough, informal way. And you can see it has a very sketchy type of quality, which is a little unusual for her because she was capable of rendering things so perfectly and technically so, just almost faultless. But she was a very inventive illustrator. I mean, these are wonderful, these drawings of animals with these borders. At least I think so. Okay, here's a treatment that the Will and Ariel Durant in the 60s and 70s were very popular authors, and they wrote many books about history, their version, of course, of history. And she did calligraphy for a whole series of these books. And it's very straightforward, very characteristic, hand italic, very much her style. The lessons of history, notable for the flourish on the word history. If you look at that, it's not a mere image of, each side is different. And she worked that out. And again, you see, look at the, say again?
Overdone, Jeanyee.
Oh, overdone, is that what you said?
She got stuck with the Pope. Stuck that jacket.
I didn't hear that. Well, anyway, again, just noticing the long tail on the R in Durant on the left-hand panel. The Age of Napoleon, the scan that I got from the internet. There's something wrong with the placement of the, it's much too tight up at the top where it says the story of civilization. It's much more centered on the page. But this was the best scan I was able to find of this cover. Again, mixing her hand-lettered Roman capitals with her typical kind of italic calligraphy. Okay, again, here you have on the left side a book jacket. It's very, it's just basically Roman capitals, except on the spine you see Simon and Schuster and the author's name, Niccolo Tucci, are written in italic. But on the front cover, it's just capitals. These are hand lettered. Again, very, very technically rendered typographic forms. Again, with this sort of ornamental framing with leaves and borders in different colors to create a lot of liveliness and richness. And facing it on the right, Unfinished Funeral. Again, you see these horizontal flourishes, very typical of her. But look at the scroll work on the design. It almost looks like ironwork. It's absolutely beautiful, I think. And just amazing the kind of detail, the sort of level of attention she paid to getting a design, working out a design like that, and then rendering it to make it do what she wanted. Okay, these two are they're very different books. One source that I read said this Chemical History of a Candle was a book that she illustrated as well as doing the cover for the jacket, that it's was intended for school children. I may have gotten that wrong. But it was not, she herself was not a scientific person, and she told an art director who commissioned her, she did some children's books that were about science, and she said, I know nothing about science. I don't know how to even approach this. And they said, well, that's good, because if you don't understand it, then we know that really is going to be suitable for kids to learn about something, which is kind of odd. But anyway, this kind of shows sort of the range of what she was capable of. You wouldn't think, looking at Chemical History of a Candle, that this was really done by a calligrapher, but it was. Winter in the Air is, again, sort of a similar type of treatment. It's got a little bit of, looks like handwritten forms on it, the rest rendered with this illustration of trees in winter, without the trees without leaves. Very effective. Okay, these two I put together to illustrate kind of the treatment where in Man's Best Hope, it is almost a very kind of masculine, plain type of treatment. Roman capitals. I don't know whether what looks like type, the author's name, Roland B. Gittleson, whether she hand-lettered that or whether that's type that she ordered. Certainly Man's Best Hope is hand-lettered. Again, you see what is essentially a difficult assignment, how to make it more lively. And so she has used these color fields of ochre and red, and then reversing the hand lettering out of a black field. I liked Young Gemini because of, first of all, it's all calligraphy. Again, you see this majuscule Y, this very characteristic majuscule Y that she uses in Young. And then she does rather ordinary italic O, U, and N. And then you get this sort of Roman minuscule G mixed with italic. It's unusual, but it works. It creates a very interesting kind of contrast, but there's integrity. And then she has, in the word Gemini, a flourish on the tail of the majuscule G with a different pen weight. This was not an easy thing to do. It would be very difficult to do something like that, but she pulls it off. It looks rather effortless. Again, I like how, for example, by Alec McGowan, how she handles all of those flourishes in again, her characteristic minuscule Y, with a horizontal flourish on the capital A and a horizontal flourish on the capital M, and then another horizontal flourish on the minuscule N at the end of McCowan. And also in the subheading, a marvelous portrait of the actor as a boy, blah, 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 you get to the end, image of a father-son relationship, and 3 horizontal flourishes at the end of those words. It's just interesting how she kind of a little hints of freedom. These are 2 covers. This author is very famous, Josephine Johnson, won Pulitzer Prize, I think maybe twice. These are very simple but really elegant treatments. The Inland Island, showing these illustration of leaves, and again, horizontal flourishes with the capital T in the ascender in inland, and then the author's name, Josephine W. Johnson, with that flourish on the W. And then these were published 4 years apart, but they're very similar, same author, same kind of overall treatment, with 7 houses with a very simple treatment with leaves. Now that discoloration you see at the lower portion, I think there was probably, again, this is something from the internet that I found, there may have been like a sticker or something that transferred some discoloration. I'm sure that wasn't there originally. This was interesting because on the left-hand side, this I think was the actual mechanical artwork for the jacket, which you see on the right. And this was published in a calligraphy anthology. I'm not sure which one, I can't remember, but it shows you how she worked it out, just in black and white. And then when it came to the actual printing, it's very carefully crafted to have a solid red background with the main title reversed out, and then a second color added in the ornamental design of crosses contained in circles. So I was interested to see that because I had been familiar with the what's called basically line art on the left-hand side, because it's in an anthology of, might be 2,000 years of calligraphy. I'm not sure. But again, I mean, look at the word reflections and how she managed, first of all, that long diagonal flourish tail on the R, and then how she worked out the flourishes in the F and L combination. Very, very carefully and thoughtfully done. Now, she worked on a number of cookbooks, including a number of Chinese cookbooks. The one on the right is from 1956, and the one on the left from 1962. What's interesting to me about the one on the right, again, this some illustration that she did, and then the rest of it is all calligraphy. I don't see any typographic forms in there, and using these color fields to create a lot of visual interest in the design. What's interesting to me is seeing the main title, Cooking with the Chinese Flavor, just how heavy and bold that italic is. It would be difficult to do a more bold italic. And she's managed, and reversing it out of the solid red really kind of brings some lightness to what could otherwise be a very heavy piece of writing. The one on the left, typical, shows her approach using illustration that she did, these decorative elements, key elements, and then these Chinese motifs with the fish and looks like a bat. So this is another cookbook that she did. This shows the front cover, back cover, and the spine. She did all the illustrations of plants, a botanical illustration. These are all herbs, which you can see she's labeled them all. Again, the title itself, she's done in a very, very bold hand, but manages through reversing it out of a solid field of color to make it look light and lively. Okay, another cookbook, Jim Lee's Chinese cookbook. I really like this because it looks very masculine. It's really, it's not her usual style with a rather, feminine italic. It's sort of an unshouled basis, and it's hard to categorize. It's hand lettered as opposed to written. Look at the way it's finished, and it's not exactly what you'd call a sans serif. It's really sort of monoline strokes with small serifs on the ends. But it's a very, very masterful design, the way she has taken these short words, Jim Lee's cookbook, they're rather short, and then put Chinese in the longest word in reversed out of this solid background to give it a lot of prominence. It's really sort of a tour de force, and it somehow manages to look quite contemporary, even though it's calligraphic. And then The Careful Writer is another mixture of rather straight calligraphy, of course, interpreted the way she does it. Notice a modern guide to English usage. She's got some serifs, for example, the M in modern, rather typographic type serifs. Also, Careful Writer is a typographic rendering mixed with her calligraphy. The word the, a very strong horizontal flourish again. She also did some cookbook jackets that were pure calligraphy and illustration. And here you see a kind of lighter style where she does this realistic, naturalistic type of illustration. Look at a celebration of vegetables. The way those vegetables are rendered, they look like dry brush watercolor. I don't really know. I'm just guessing. But very, very masterful and quite lively. And I like the way a celebration of vegetables, it looks kind of like you can see watercolor wash in there. So it was possibly original, very straight, direct calligraphy. And even that huge, look at the capitals, the A, the C, and the V in vegetables. They're very wide with, again, this sort of mixed type of italic where you have the O in celebration, really looks like a Roman O mixed with some italic forms, and then that minuscule G in vegetables with the huge bowl that contains the word for. She pulls it off. I mean, it's sort of amazing when you kind of sit back and just look at it. And then soufflés, mousses, jellies, and creams is almost the same thing. What I really like is that border. It looks like it was done with felt pens. I have no idea, how she did it. Maybe not. But it kind of has a roughness and a directness that I like. She was capable of doing that, and she did. These are two other cookbook covers. Judith Olney's Summer Food. Again, these horizontal flourishes. A naturalistic, possibly dry brush watercolor illustration of all these different little foods. And look at her, she signed this one Wong. You look down at the very bottom, you can see she signed it. And then a treatment on the right, nothing beats borscht, with this very flattened kind of illustration of beets and flowers, I think to resemble possibly Russian folk art. And then again, her signature at the very bottom of that beet leaf, you can see Wong. And the calligraphy is an interesting mixture, almost an uncial type of letter form, with some individual characteristics like that R, the capital R. Now, she did work with a number of other artists, and she did, I think, 4 different projects with Maurice Sendak, who's very popular children's book author. And in this case, We Are All in the Dumps with Jack and Guy. She did the lettering for that. And you can, I mean, once you know that, you can kind of see the traces of her touches. Again, diagonal flourishes, and the K's, the R's, she's the tails. Look at the word nursery rhymes. Again, you see that Y with a descender, the S with a descender. So she manages to put in some really calligraphic touches there. Oh, I included this because she did, it's hard to imagine how much she did and what the scope of it is. She also did some rather freely done work. This is the cover of this book, Dawn Wakes in the East by Audrey Topping, is shown on the left-hand side with in the lower portion of the slide. The opening title page is the main piece here. The white with this very stark, black writing on it, highly flourished, big descender tails on Audrey and Topping. Again, a big diagonal tail on Wakes, of the K in Wakes, and flourished capitals throughout. And then on the right side, where it says Chinese lifestyle, the book contains many sections, and each section heading is very, calligraphy, no drawings or ornamentation done by her, paired with Chinese calligraphy. Now, we do know she did do Chinese calligraphy. I don't know that she did the calligraphy for this book, but there are books where her Chinese calligraphy is shown. She did beautiful Chinese calligraphy as well as Western calligraphy. And then this is a rather late piece for her. I personally find this far too sentimental. Tasha Tudor, not throwing any shade here, any judgment, but Jeanyee rose to the occasion with this all for love with lots of flourishes, the characteristic horizontal flourishes, diagonal flourishes on the tails of certain letters. So this shows a jacket, the title page, and an interior page with some calligraphy. Okay, what do we have next? Okay, so that completes the book jackets and some of the books with the illustrations. She also did calligraphic maps. Okay, now calligraphic maps I've done a few myself. They are not easy. And there was a whole article which is online that is about her and her map making. And these are typical maps. And she got these assignments, and there weren't just 1 or 2 maps. There were like dozens of maps, all like this. Now, mind you, this is 1988. Yes, digital tools were becoming available, but she did everything by hand. There's no Adobe Illustrator used in this, so I'm very certain of it. And you look at certain touches, for example, in the main one, where it says Yellow Sea and South China Sea. So those are unusual, the way those capitals are flourished. But there is a tradition in map making where you see that type of writing. You don't see it so much in manuscripts, but you do see it in maps. So she really took this map making pretty seriously, and knew what she was doing. This is a rather late, let's see, I'm going to try and get rid of this. Can you guys see the caption in the right upper corner? Does it have a date in there? It's covered up in my view. It's a gallery view.
It's 1997.
1997, yeah.
Wines of the Rhone Valley in 1997, Simon and Schuster. Yeah.
Yeah, 1997. So she was in 1997, she was 70. How old was she? She was born in 1920. What's 20 from 97? 77 years old when she did this. There are many of them. I didn't count, I don't have the book, it's just what I found online, but it's not these two, it's more like at least a dozen, where she did these maps of French vineyards. Again, you see everything was done by her, those grape leaf borders, that's all illustrated. And all looks like all pretty much calligraphy, all hand done. And she probably did the other illustrations in there too. I don't know that for a fact, but highly flourished. Unusual to see lots of flourishes like that on these heavyweight, unsealed type capitals, but she could do it. I put this in here because I was just fascinated by this map. These were end paper maps from a book called Newcomers from 1959. I just found it so interesting. I'm fascinated by maps of New York. I don't know why, but they're pretty complicated. And here again, you see all these different types of lettering that she's put in here, outline lettering with capitals. Again, these highly flourished, like Atlantic Ocean with these flourishes that she worked out, which are typical in maps. You see those old maps, 19th and 18th century maps. You see that kind of work. This shows from the book Southeast Asia, View to the Southeast by Santharama Rao, which we saw at the very beginning. We saw a book jacket by her, that author. And on the right is what I think is probably the actual line art that she created for the map. And then on the left, this ochre is used as end paper maps. And it's all reversed except for the, that box in the lower left-hand corner, Southeast Asia, that is reversed out. But the rest is all just not reversed out. It's shown as she did it, just black lettering on white background, and then the rest of it is reversed out. Okay, now I found a type design that she did called Jeanyee, and this is it. And it's for photo composition. Okay, that's not digital. It's not digital type. Okay, so what that means is she drew these letters. It was transferred into artwork, and then however they, the technical process for photo composition was there were different methods, proprietary methods. You could have headings and titles set using this alphabet. And so this is one that she did. Now, she may have done others. I suspect she did do many jobs where it was just straight typographic rendering. Typically, with that kind of work, it can get extended into other applications. and then the entity that the stuff is for decides they want it. Even I've done this, and it was produced in photo composition. Now today, of course, it would be done digitally. Okay, but this predates that. This is from 1958. So she may have done others. I just don't know, but I was able to find this. Okay, now in the later part of her life, so she was instrumental, as far as I know, and maybe Paul, you can verify this. She was instrumental in the Society of Scribes, in the formation and development of the Society of Scribes, which is the New York Calligraphy Society. And at that point, in the mid-70s, I think she began to turn her attention to teaching. And she did do a lot of workshops. She did them here in San Francisco, for example. I know she did them in Los Angeles. And I have found some references to workshops that she did on the East Coast, not just calligraphy. She also taught how to do hand lettering, typographic hand lettering, which she did all by hand. She didn't use tools like French curves. She just had an absolutely rock solid hand and, rendered letters with a very, very high degree of finish. But she also taught calligraphy in the way that, people today are doing calligraphy. And she created model sheets. And these were given to me. I never took a workshop from her, although I did meet her once. She's a lovely, lovely person, just the nicest lady you can imagine. But these were given to me, and she did a number of different hands. Carolingian, it's interesting, the Carolingian example also includes capitals, which have a lot of affinity with very late unsealed forms. Okay, so now she didn't, from what I can tell, based on these model sheets, she didn't do a lot of tracing, except for this Book of Kells one, to particular manuscripts. Okay, for example, like Edward Johnston was very interested in certain 10th century manuscripts written in England, and worked very closely basing on specific manuscripts. You don't really see that here, but nevertheless, 9th century Carolingian, it's pretty accurate, and it's done in a very simple way. No real analysis, but just sort of showing how you calculate the weight with pen widths. She doesn't really get into the whole pen angle problem, which is interesting. And then here are a bunch of others, including Blackletter, Textura, her version. And interesting that she shows in the upper right-hand corner a very kind of simple textura mixed with Roman capitals. You see that in the work of some German scribes like Friedrich Neugebauer did that a lot. Karl Georg did that. And then underneath it, plain and swashed capitals. Okay, so she doesn't really say whether they're italic or what they are, but they kind of have those kinds of affinities. And then you see that alphabet with flourishes. So these are here mostly just to show kind of the range of what she did. Not making any statements or judgments about, an approach to teaching or anything like that. She did what she did. She put these out. Okay, now I have some of her formal calligraphy. When I say formal calligraphy, I mean expressive calligraphy, mainly. There's some other stuff. She did some commercial work that was pure calligraphy. And she did everything. She did greeting cards. She did posters. She, she did manuscripts. She did a lot of kind of routine calligraphy, certificates, scrolls. It's interesting. She actually says the word scroll, which is a word that I heard very, very early on in a job that I had. They're not scrolls, not real scrolls. They're just regular broadsides, but people call them scrolls because they're like testimonials or awards. So she did all of that stuff, pretty much whatever came along. But some of it, okay, this is a very well-known example. This was for New York Life, two versions, 1962 and 1963. They are different. Okay, when you study this, you see each one is different. Now, the title, "The Christmas Prayer," I don't know if she reused that. I don't think so. I think she did. You compare letters between the two. There are very, very slight differences, but it's sort of at first glance you might think, oh, she just recycled that title. No, I don't think she did recycle it. I think she re-rendered it. And then the text itself, it's obviously uniquely done. So this is very famous. I first saw this in the 70s as an example, and I was very taken with this. Okay, so this was something. This was probably for an advertising account that she was associated with, did work for, but it was printed in the millions in magazines for years. These are examples from calligraphers' calendar. So these are pure expressive calligraphy by Jeanyee Wong, not commercial work. Okay. What's interesting to me on the quotation on the right-hand side is the number of diagonal flourishes on the tails of K and R. And she manages to pull that off. And on the left, it's interesting, the flourish on the word music is completely separately done with different size pen. And then here are two more. And the one on the left is Blackletter, textura, done in a very expressive way where, their baselines are shifting from letter to letter, weights and heights are shifting, and very effective. And somehow manages to get a flourish in that K in the second line at the very, very end. And again, the facing panel on the right shows horizontal flourishes yet again. And then this is a very late piece for her, 2006. So she would have been 86 years old when she did this, which to me is rather amazing. It's beautiful, unsealed. Okay, so this is the section, this was the actual genesis of this whole presentation. In 2017, I was trying to track down, I knew this, but I forgot, okay? I was trying to track down a piece that was always published as had been reproduced in different ways. And I first saw it in a book by Tom Gordy on handwriting, and it said written for Richard Harrison. So I was trying to track this down, and I had forgotten that I had been told that this particular piece, which I will show you, not this is another piece. So I'm getting ahead of myself here. So the Harrison collection in San Francisco, in the San Francisco Public Library, has a number of originals by Jeanyee Wong. They also have a lot of correspondence and personal things that they got from a variety of sources, not just from her. And also books, the books like The Wisdom of Confucius. They have a copy of that and others. Okay, so they do have a small collection of items by Jeanyee Wong, but most important, of course, are these original pieces of calligraphy, expressive calligraphy, and that were commissioned by Richard Harrison. And this is one of them from 1965. And what you see on the left is the piece, the entire piece with the credit written out by Jeanyee Wong for the Richard Harrison Collection of Calligraphy and Lettering. Okay, she made sure she wanted to get that in there. And then on the right is actually a paper label for the folder that she placed this broadside in. Okay, so on the left is the piece, and it's, it's just the way you see it on a piece of paper, and it's in a folder. And on that she made, then the folder is just a very plain, piece of paper that's folded. But she put a label on the front of the folder, and that is what you see on the right, which is very similar to the title of the broadside. Okay, so, and then on the left here is a poem by Keats, "A Thing of Beauty is a Joy Forever." This has been reproduced and in other publications and written about, and it's written in red ink, and it's very characteristic, lots of flourishes, lovely, kind of almost spontaneous, italic, at least it looks that way. But again, we see all these flourishes done in a different weight of pen. We see the diagonal flourishes. She manages to get one on that minuscule Q in the word quiet on the last line. Also in a bower quiet for us, she's got a long diagonal flourish tail of the Q. And then this piece on the right is just a printed example from 1955 on for exactly what it says. The Cooper Union Museum for the Arts of Decoration announces an exhibition of better handwriting. So she didn't claim to be a handwriting specialist per se, in the sense of like Lloyd Reynolds or Tom Gordy or those guys who were very involved in the teaching of italic handwriting, and italic handwriting as a style of handwriting that could be taught to children even. And there is a Society for Italic Handwriting that's devoted to those kinds of efforts. But nevertheless, she was aware of it, and this invitation is an interesting mix of almost a very formal approach to regular calligraphy with handwriting, in the sense of there's many joins that you see between the letters. Okay, so this was in the Harrison collection, so I put it in here just as an example. It's not something that Richard Harrison commissioned, it's just an item they have. And here you see another original that's in the Harrison collection on the left-hand side. This was a pre-existing piece that Susie Taylor purchased from her. She basically approached her and said, "We'd like to get some more of your work in this collection." And Jeanyee responded saying, "Well, I just happen to have some things that you could have, and this is one of them." And written in a very kind of familiar type of pen uncial. And I paired it with an illustration from a book, The Cherry Tree Carol, which I believe won an American Institute of Graphic Arts award in 1951. This is, again, a book with many illustrations, full-page illustrations by Jeanyee Wong. And I thought this illustration was a good match for this piece of calligraphy. They're completely unrelated pieces. And I just put it in here for, the hell of it. And the Harrison collection does have this book, The Cherry Tree Carol, by the way. Again, an American Institute of Graphic Arts award. She won several of those. Okay, so this is the piece that was the subject of the article I wrote in 2017. And on the left is a photostat of the original piece that Richard Harrison commissioned in 1958, I believe. Yeah, 1958. It is missing. the original is missing. Why is it missing? Richard, I think the consensus is the original actually never made it to the library, although he intended it to go to the library. But Richard was very generous. He was a very, very generous man, particularly with calligraphers. And the story is he loaned it to Huilu Tots in Estonia at some point, and it never returned. So the library has photostat. And the National Library of Estonia was contacted by the San Francisco Public Library asking for the piece back, and they were refused. So what you have here is a case where a patron who commissioned some very fine calligraphy, and somehow the piece did not go where it was meant to go to. And it's unclear, was it a loan or was it a gift? Now, he did give things away. You know, he had a lot of stuff, and sometimes he gave things away. He would feel particularly generous, and people would ooh and ah over his things, and he would gift them. So it's hard to know. Anyway, this piece, the one, on the left, was the first work by Jeanyee Wong that I saw. This was reproduced again in the book by Tom Gordy. And it really caught my eye. And it's, again, typical Jeanyee Wong, horizontal flourishes, diagonal flourishes, and long tails on K's and R's and things like that. But it's only 12 inches by 9 inches. It's a rather small piece, but it is formal calligraphy. So there's more to the story about this. This got turned, my article was, Carl Roars took it, and somehow it turns out that there was another version of this piece, which you see on the right, and you can see it's a little bit different. You can see very similar, basically the same thing, but it's different. The title is different. There's a little ornamental leaf at the beginnings of lines, and the way it's signed, Sir Philip Sidney. And this came through Jerry Kelly. Now, Jerry Kelly, I don't know that he owns this. He was, from what I know, I don't really know all the facts here, but he came into possession of Jeannie's work archive. And I don't know, maybe somebody on this call knows. It's apparently has been donated to the Rochester Institute of Technology. I have not been able to confirm that. There's nothing that I could find, and I have not reached out personally to the custodians. So this may be in there. Anyway, that's the story of this particular sonnet. And here you see a couple of letters written by Jeanyee Wong. The first one, 1958, where she kind of looks like handwriting, but it just looks like, regular cursive handwriting. But when you start to look at it, it's really more formal calligraphy, or rather informal, formal calligraphy that she wrote, and it's very tiny, tiny writing. And so that's from 1958. She's basically telling him the Sydney broadside has been mailed, it's on its way, it's coming. And then they wrote letters to each other about handwriting and paper and whatnot. And then fast forward to 1990, and here is a letter from Jeanyee Wong to Susie Taylor talking about the problems with the Harrison collection. And what she's referring to is the fact that her manuscript is missing. Sir Philip Sidney broadside is missing. And she goes on to say, too bad there are problems with the Harrison collection. always I had thought that Richard donated his acquisitions to the SF Library. Well, he did, but not all of them. And then she talks about, thanks to Anne, she's talking about Anne Yamasaki. That's the Anne she's referring to. Richard was pleased to see the 2 pages which he bought for the library, and he made color copies. It goes on and on. And then she volunteers that if Susie wanted to talk to her about all of this, that she could just call her. And I don't know whether that happened. But so the Harrison collection includes a lot of stuff like this. Okay, correspondence, sort of ancillary material. Okay, now there's more. Okay, she, as I said, was a commercial artist. And she was frequently art directed very strictly. And so a lot of the work that you see, like the book jackets, they had to go through a long, art direction review process to get to their final form. I am certain, I don't know that for a fact, but, just what I know about that. But she did like doing informal expressive work. And it came through in a lot of her correspondence and also personal greetings. And these show you a few things that she did for Ismar David. Okay, so she was part of a circle of, circle's not actually the right word. There were a number of individuals in New York who were very prominent in the graphic arts as calligraphers. Alice Kuth, Bob Boyajian, Ismar David, certainly Jeanyee Wong, a number of them, Lily Ronker, okay, and so she was friends with Ismar David, and there's an Ismar David website with where they whoever put this together, because he's passed away, kind of collected a number of these little personal greetings, and they're really charming, and they really demonstrate a lot of her abilities, but also a sense of her as a person and what she was extending herself to these people she considered her friends, Ismar David and his wife being one of them. And so these I took from the internet. But you can see, for example, in the lower left-hand corner, she did do very free work when she was able to, not just all this very careful typographic stuff. And now these are from the Harrison collection. So the Harrison collection includes a lot of stuff that is not what you think. And it includes a lot of correspondence. And it comes from different sources. So these, for example, this envelope to Susie Taylor, Susie, although it was written to Susie, she immediately put it into the collection because it was from Jeanyee Wong, along with her letter, which we saw a little bit earlier. These things to Lily are Lily Ronker. So Lily Ronker and her husband, Eric Ronker, were friends of Jeanyee Wong, close friends, as far as I know. And they were constantly sending little love notes to each other. And these are a few. Now, how did these get to the library? Lily Ronker gave them to the library. Lily Ronker, at the end of her life, moved out here because her daughter lives here on the West Coast, in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area. And Lily spent her final years here. And she donated many things to the library, including much of this correspondence. And then there's some more. The far left is a piece I found from the internet. It was a calligraphic wedding card. The other three are in the Richard Harrison collection, and they were personal notes written to Susie Taylor. And the conclusion of all of this, talking about Jeanyee Wong is in that final piece, All Best Wishes and Love from Jeanyee. That is our last slide in this presentation. So thank you for your patience with all of my words about and examples of Jeanyee Wong, and I apologize again for the technical glitches. Thank you very much. And here I just want to acknowledge some people. Raul, thank you for making this all happen.
Thank you.
Andrea, I did tell Andrea, but she's not here.
Actually, I think she is. I saw her join.
Here?
Andrea
Okay.
Grimes, yes.
Okay. Hi, Andrea. So that's what I have.
Hi, John. I loved it.
Hi,
Thank you.
Andrea.
Hi. Thank you so much. This is brilliant. Brilliant. I have to go back. I want to go back and look at her correspondence all over again. Not to mention, not to mention, I want to look through the rest of the library's collection for designs by Jeanyee to transfer to us. Wouldn't that be great?
That would. That would. I'm sure there's plenty of them on the fourth floor in that closed portion. And
yeah, actually on the and in the humanities department as well. And I would thank you so much for the information and slides about her cartography, which I am going to be on the lookout for as well.
Yeah, again, this is not comprehensive. This is what was interesting was the amount of material I was able to find on the internet just by doing some very simple searches. And particularly with the books, it's interesting to see, the survival of that work is kind of a manifestation of that, the fact that everything's online now, and including you want to buy something, that's the first place you look.
I thought it was, thank you, John. I thought it was really interesting to go back in time to paste ups and mechanicals, because she did all that work sans computer, and I had some questions about, like, when she did those type renderings that are so accurate, do you think she did them larger and then in the paste up process they were reduced, or was she just so good that that didn't have to happen?
I would say, Louise, she did a real size.
She did them to real size. Okay. Because she was so good. And I also love the whole thing about design being so important to calligraphy. I mean, that's something I've always felt, and how, her flourishes were there, but they were so precisely placed in relation to things, and they weren't overdone, they were tasteful. And like some things where she'd do a Y, there was one young Gemini or something, and the Y comes into the cap G, and ageless Chinese, where she had the lowercase g go through the lowercase h below it. So she just dealt with spacing so well. And, it was just so wonderful to see that, just see that. And also, I also loved the prices on those books. $1.95, it's like, wait a minute. So anyway, I just really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was awesome, John. Can I take just a second to show you all? You mentioned her work with Maurice Sendak. She was one of my teachers in New York a very, very, very long time ago. But this was one of the books that she worked on with Maurice, and all of the text is hand lettered by her.
Oh, yes.
As well as, sorry, this was actually my children's book. I mean, my daughter's book. So it's a little, it's a little well used, but of course, the lettering on the title and so forth. And she has this lovely, just a little moment of a little lovely
hand lettered
dedication.
That's wonderful. Oh,
It's
yeah.
an absolute treasure of mine. And she was the sweetest, most delightful person that
Mm.
you can imagine, as many of you knew, but she was wonderful. She and Sheila Waters and Robert Boyajian were three of my main teachers,
Oh,
long time ago.
Wow, lucky you. Yeah.
wow.
It's
Yeah.
wonderful that you knew her, Marianne.
She was very
Yes.
sweet. She actually, I had some private lessons with her for book jacket design too. She was just a lovely,
Oh,
lovely person.
Mm.
Yeah, she was really, really sweet. So this was an especially nice presentation for me, John, really near and dear to my heart. And thank you.
well, I was really hoping, that there would be people on this call who knew her. I only met her once, and I mean, I loved meeting her. Um, but but this is by no means comprehensive. I mean, again, it started for me with this question about the sonnet in the Harrison collection, but it was really nice to spend some time, kind of seeing what could be found, and just surprising how much there is to be found. At the same time, knowing that she did so much that I have no idea about. And I'm sure she did a lot of stuff that nobody has ever seen except the people who commissioned it, at the time.
Right.
So
she did a whole series too on the Spoon River anthologies. Are you familiar with those?
a little
Poetry?
bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
She did all of those also. Yeah. Yeah, she was very
Yeah. Very prolific, very prolific. All out of her little apartment in New York, I guess. I'd really love to know. I mean, I would make a trip to RIT to see their archive, if indeed there is an archive there of her work. I have to pester Jerry Keller and find out. I don't know, maybe Paul, do you know? Do you have
Amelia,
information?
Amelia Eula Fontanelle at RIT. I can give you her email.
Okay.
Either in that collection or it's the one Roger Remington organized. I don't know whether it's the one with Vignelli or the one with Zopp. It's one of the two collections.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's supposed to be an RIT with her stuff.
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard. But there really needs to be some more comprehensive treatment on her.
RIT has this Mar David's collection.
Oh, okay.
That's why you were seeing that stuff online, probably from people at RIT.
Oh, I see.
Connie Avni probably put the stuff up.
Mm.
Because Mar David's typefaces and stuff. And she's an RIT, I don't know, visiting scholar or something.
Hmm. Fascinating.
Jeanyee did such precise, technically rendered Roman caps. That's what I found impressive. The ones, I mean, in those book jackets, it looked like typography almost, but it was hand done.
What
That was amazing.
Anne is missing, and which I only know from talking to Jeanyee, is her work for Caswell Massey, which was a specialist chemistry druggist store in New York that made its own products. And she apparently for decades lettered like their labels. And what I remember seeing decades ago of when she showed me was something that looked like it had come from an English, shop in like 1800. It was not, it looked like something, engraved from that,
Mm.
and she apparently did tons of stuff for them for like decades, where
Yeah.
it's very small to begin with, and it's very broad pen calligraphic. And I've never seen any of this stuff reproduced in any book or any website devoted to her. But I know, she told me she'd been doing it. I mean, she showed me this, I guess, in the 80s, and she'd been doing it since like the 60s, maybe.
Well, Caswell Massey. Oh,
Mhm.
WELL hyphen, I believe, MASSEY. I don't know. I'm not sure if they still exist in Europe or on the Upper East Side. But as I wrote that, referring to Louise's question, what she also told me was that when she did jacket comps, they wanted everything. They didn't want simply squiggles for the blurbs and stuff. All that had to be rendered exactly as the text would be, even if it would be set in type later on. And her teacher, George Salter, did the same thing, and so does Phil Grushkin, her classmate. So, this was not unique to Jeanyee, but I mean, that's what a lot of people were able to do back then, was to render like 8. But don't
Well,
eat.
you had to. That was a requirement that you had to do that.
Well, I mean, later
So
you were allowed to like do little squiggles, for the
Mm,
director, and they wouldn't worry about it. But I guess in the 40s, 50s, they really wanted to know what somebody was going to say about a book, what the
mm.
was.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and I think she probably did a lot of it with a brush. And
There is some material on, there is an article uh, where she paired up with David Gaddy, who was also a commercial lettering artist, a very prominent one, where they discussed their working methods, and they were very different, although the end product was very similar.
they're very good. Dave got into book jacket designing late in his life. He had been
Mm,
something, and he did a ton of book jackets,
mm,
thousands, literally.
mhm,
Painted for one job, I remember, where the jacket went through so many iterations due to the obnoxious author. In the end, Dave's jacket was used. Well, the author had unlimited money, and
mm.
I did the interior of the book, but
Ah,
Dave was working in the late 80s and early 90s, so he was not doing things at scale like Jeanyee. He was using stats and working larger, and he was a letterer, not a calligrapher. That much more.
mm, right.
Or the Society of Scribes calendars and things. He was principally, somebody who a lot of his jackets were drawn. Daniel Steele.
Mm,
I think he might have been the Daniel Steele jacket author. I mean, jacket
mm.
does. He had a couple of really big, sort of repeat clients.
She lived in San Francisco.
Well, he lived in Long Island, cross country.
Well,
It
the
was
other
ver-
thing that really kind of caught my attention was her illustration. That she was a full-fledged illustrator. And interesting that, she collaborated with Maurice Sendak on those books, because she was willing, she was willing to work with somebody who he was probably very particular. I mean, she says he was, but they got along famously. So, yeah.
What a wonderful long life.
Yes.
Yes.
God, if we can all be writing when we're 88.
Yeah, really.
So true. So true.
Wow.
Well, this has been wonderful, but I'm going to sign off now. Thank you so
Okay.
much, John,
You're
and thank you,
welcome.
Raul. It was really a pleasure.
Thank
Pleasure
you.
to
Thank
meet
you,
all of you.
Raul.
See you. Take care. Bye-bye
Thank
now.
you,
Me
Mary
too.
Ann.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. It was great.
Sure.
Thank you for a great presentation, John.
Oh, you're welcome. It's fun.
So join us next month on Sunday, April 19th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Juan Luis Gargurevich will give a presentation about historian and calligrapher Felipe Guaman Poma de Ayala and his chronicles about the Spanish colonial period in Peru. So that will be interesting. Juan Luis is from Lima, and I think I'm going to be translating for him during the presentation. So I'm going to be boning up on my Spanish.
Great.
Okay. Look forward to that. All right.
So take care, everybody. And
See you
thank you so
later.
much for joining us. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.